Can God still create something new? At the climax of Korach's rebellion, Moses makes a remarkable request. If God creates a new creation, ve'im bri'ah yivra Hashem, the commentators are troubled. Even Ezra refuses to read the verse as describing a genuinely new creation. The Mishnah teaches that the earth's mount was created before the first Shabbat. Maimonides argues that all miracles were built into the nature from beginning. Nothing new under the sun. And yet, every morning we praise God as the one who renews each day continually the work of creation. Not created, recreates. The tension becomes even sharper when the Talmud transfers Korach's descent into Sheol into a descent into Gehenna. Are the rabbis simply interpreting the Torah, or are they creating a new religious institution? From Korach to Gehenna, from the daily renewal of creation to the Chasam Sofer famous declaration that the new is forbidden by the Torah, we will explore one of Judaism's deepest paradoxes, a tradition that insists nothing is new while constantly creating something new. Welcome to Madlik. My name is Jeffrey Stern, and at Madlik, we light a spark or shed some light on a Jewish text or tradition. Along with Rabbi Adam Mintz, we host Madlik Disruptive Torah on your favorite podcast platform, and now on YouTube and Substack. We also publish a source sheet on Sefaria, and a link is included in the show notes. This week, we read Parshat Korach. Join us as we jump into Korach's crevasse and discuss creation and recreation in Judaism. I'll tell you, Rabbi, my favorite verse, I would say, but it's not a verse. My favorite sentence in all of our liturgy is "Ubetuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit," that God every day recreates creation. And here we have, we're going to see the rabbis have a real problem with anything being created after the Genesis was over.
Yeah, I mean, it comes up a couple of times. It's like the splitting of the sea. How can you have a splitting of the sea even though it breaks the rules of nature? Good. This is going to be an interesting exploration.
And we've done Korach a few times, so who knew? I never knew this verse had the word Bria in it. So we start in Numbers 16:30. But if God creates a new creation, then the ground opens its mouth and swallows up them all that is theirs, and they go down in live in Sheol. So this is Moses talking. He says, then you will know that these men have scorned God. So it's at the end of the rebellion, and it's almost like a test, but the Hebrew, as I said before, the bri'ah yivra Hashem. And if Moses says to God, you will create a new creation and create this crevasse to swallow them up. And then, of course, it does use this word Sheol, which means pit, I would say. Everett Fox says Sheol, the underworld, which in the Bible is a nondescript gray space, rather like the Greeks' Hades, and not the later heaven and hell of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So it's not typically associated with Gehenna, which has that baggage. So we have those two kind of interesting words used in our verse.
That's going to be a good madlik someday to talk about Sheol and Gehenna and hell and all those things. Okay, really good.
Well, we'll touch upon it a little bit today. But first, we have to get to the cowards. Ibn Ezra, he doesn't want to have any part of it. He says, Bria, and if God will make a new thing, some say that the word Bria, a new thing, refers to bringing forth of something that was never in existence. He says, in other words, creation. I have already explained that the word Bria is related to the word of Uvara, hack, in the hack of them. Many cities have been split open, and those who dwell in them have gone down to the pit. This guy is from California. He knows all about earthquakes and the earth opening up and creating a crevasse. He says there's no issue here. It has nothing to do with creation. Just walks away from it.
Right. He's forced to say that because he can't imagine that there should be a new creation.
Okay. And it's hard for us to understand how important this discussion is because, frankly, for us, I don't know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, if God created the world and stopped, or if God created the world and kept on creating. But let's look at the Mishnah, which is the earliest source we have, I think, for this, what seems to be a very profound philosophy. The Pirkei Avot says in chapter 5, 6, 10 things were created on the eve of the Sabbath at twilight, and these are them. Number 1, the mouth of the earth. So it lists 10 things, including some that our listeners are surely aware of. The mouth of the donkey, that relates to Bilam. The rainbow, maybe for Noah. The manna, but it starts with the mouth of the earth. And Rabbi, it starts with the mouth of the earth because of our verse. And that I only realized this year. If our verse did not use that word bria, creation, it would not have triggered. It's truly a trigger for this Mishnah. But what the Mishnah is implying, and we're going to see how Maimonides reads it in a second, is that everything ceased to be created on the 7th day. And in that Ben Hashmashot, in that twilight time, God added a few extra things. But as we've said so in the past, it's kind of like writing a program that has programming in it for the year 2000, has programming in it for a lunar eclipse. Everything was created and written into the fabric of the universe according to this Mishnah, in the 7 days of creation, or at the last minute at twilight of the last day.
Fantastic.
So what does Maimonides say in his commentary on this Mishnah? He says, we have already mentioned in the 8th chapter, that's one of his books, that they would not believe in creation by the divine will at every instant. They, I assume he's referring to the rabbis.
Right.
Rather, at the beginning of things, he placed into their nature that they should do everything that they would do in the future, whether they be things that would happen constantly, that being a natural thing, or whether it be something unusual, that it being a miracle. It is all one regarding this. Therefore, they said on the 6th day, he placed into the nature of the earth that it would sink under Korach and his community. He goes on to say, and don't think that these 10 miracles are all encompassing. If you have a miracle that happened is not included in this list, then it was actually just done during the first 7 days. Get over it. But I think my first takeaway has always been one of amazing respect for the rabbis. So many religions are based on miracles, that somehow when nature changes, it proves something, that somehow it's a convincing argument, and that somehow we want God to swoop down, deus ex machina, and change things for us. And it seems that the rabbis, and this is amplified by Maimonides, have a real problem with miracles. And I'm proud to be part of that religion. What's your take?
Right. No, I mean, you know that I have a problem with miracles. The Judaism, at least the way we have it through the lens of Rambam, is a rationalist religion. And therefore, the idea that there should be new creations, in a sense, that's kind of a scary model. We would prefer that Judaism makes sense for us.
So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, it does seem as though maybe if Maimonides had made this up by himself, I would say he's over-influenced by Greek philosophy. He's over-influenced by foreign philosophies that somehow have to understand how creation happened. It was a problem because it is miraculous, but they put it in a box. It was like the first power and the second power, and then let's move on. But we Jews, actually, if you read the whole Torah, God is very involved in humanity. He's very involved with our lives. So I'm kind of torn between, on the one hand, loving the fact that there are no miracles and that we don't emphasize or celebrate miracles. And on the other hand, that it kind of does say God's role has kind of finished, at least as it relates to the physical world, creation. that's just something that's kind of hanging over this discussion. Let's go to the Talmud in Sanhedrin that actually talks about the episode that is under discussion. In Sanhedrin 110a, it says, Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? But if the Lord creates a new creation and the earth opens up its mouth, that is our verse. Says the Talmud, Moses said before the Holy One, blessed be he. If Gehenna, now our listeners need to know, Gehenna is not mentioned in the Pasuk. Gehenna, am I right in saying it carries more baggage than Sheol?
Definitely does. Right, definitely carries more baggage. It's interesting that's the way they give it to us in the English here, because like Everett Fox said in the translation beforehand, Gehenna represents something that was important in Judaism and Christianity later. That's not reflected in the Torah.
Okay, and it's not simply the translation. The Talmud does say Gehenna. So this is what the rabbis are adding.
Right. It's already the rabbis, but it's not in the Torah itself.
Oh, absolutely. So let's pause it out for a second. As you said, we might dedicate a whole discussion to this one day. But Sheol basically means the pit. And up until this moment, if you go through the whole Torah, when somebody dies, he might be gathered to his people. He might bless them. There's no talk of another world. And he goes down into the pit, into the earth. It's pretty physical. Gehenna, I think, really does carry with it. It's not quite the hell of the Christians, but it does carry with it a little more baggage. Am I correct in that?
There's no question that that's right.
Okay.
But you're right. It's from the rabbis. It's the Roman period, the Greek period. It's a whole different thing than what the Torah is talking about.
Okay. So this is what the rabbis put into Moses' mouth. Moses said before the Holy One, blessed be he. If Gehenna is already created, good. But if not, God should create it now. Now, if you just stop right there, that kind of fits into the narrative in an exciting way. Because a rebellion just occurred. You could make a case that it was a unique rebellion. Maybe you could make the case that all of the shortfallings of the Jews until this moment were against God. We had the golden calf. We had murmurings. Here was a revolution against Moshe, and he needed some tools in his toolbox. He needed a fiery hell. He needed to be able to hold that over somebody. And if you read that into this verse, it's kind of into this sentence from the Talmud, it's pretty good. He says, if God's got a hell and a brimstone, I'm going to use it. And if he does it, he better create it. I just found that delightful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that is great. Okay.
And now, a word from our sponsor. If there's one thing we value at Matlik Podcast, it's reading texts and talking about them. That's why I'm excited to share something I created called Voice Gift Play. It fits in the palm of your hand like a remote control and clips onto any book. It's inspired by those old school museum audio guides, but this is personal. Voice Gift Play stores up to 10 hours of audio across 999 numbered recordings. You simply enter a number to record a comment, memory, or explanation, and enter the same number to play it back. It's perfect for B'nai Mitzvah practicing their laning, capturing Grandpa's favorite tune, or recording Chad Gad Yah in a voice that matters. Go to voice.gift, that's www.voice.gift, and use code MADLIK for 15% off. Thanks. And now back to our podcast. So now the rabbis say, for what was Moses asking? If we say that his request was for God to actually create Gehenna, but isn't it written in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun. Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. There are new creations after the 6 days.
There are no new creations.
There are no new creations after the 6 days of creation. So first of all, we all know Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, is wisdom literature, and probably that was not the intention of the writer. He was talking about the way people use it in our actually language and literature. But the rabbis good. They took it as this seems to be the source for where the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot came from, and they seem to take it as nothing can be created. Just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not surprising because the rabbis often take verses out of context, not just from the word from the book of Ecclesiastes, but generally they take things out of context. So I'm not so worried about that.
We're not worried, but we do know that they felt compelled, that there is this, they feel compelled to stop creation after creation finished. And they use this verse to amplify that, but you're absolutely correct. What interests me more is that they felt compelled to do this. So what is their solution? Rather, Moses asked God to bring the opening of Gehenna close to there so that the assembly of Korach would be buried alive. So what it's saying is he is talking to the staging. He's saying, if Gehenna is here, fine. Otherwise, I need you to send a truck to go get Gehenna because we need the opening in the earth put sweet to swallow up these sinners.
Which is interesting, means that these things are created to solve a problem, right? They needed to do something to the assembly of Korach, so therefore they made this new creation. No, God wouldn't have made a new creation except that he needed it. The manna was a new creation, but he needed the manna because the Jews needed a way to eat in the desert.
Yes. But what I love about this piece of Talmud is it mixes up a few things. There is no way that we cannot take Gehenna as an added layer to Sheol. It's not a translation. It is an interpretation. It is an up-to-dateism where they therefore, I don't think I'm stretching when they say in their mind, Moshe is actually asking for a new moral force. He's asking for a new a tool to hold over the sinners of Korach. And he says, if it exists, fine. Otherwise, we better create it. They have a problem with that. So they mollify it by saying, we're talking about transportation issues, not real creation issues. But I just love the mix of it all. So let's go to the other extreme, this beautiful saying that we say before the morning Shema every day. And it says, Hameir la'aretz v'ledarim olau barachamim. He illuminates the earth and provides light for those who dwell on it with compassion. U'b'tuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. And it says, and his goodness renews every day, continually the work of creation. So I did a little searching, and I found the source for this is actually in the Talmud in Chagiga. And Reish Lakish said, because sometimes you do wonder, Rabbi, in our liturgy, was the liturgist making this stuff up? I'd say
and generally the answer is no. There always is an earlier source to the liturgy.
Which, again, and normally it's a pretty obvious source.
Right.
But here it's not so obvious. So in Hagiga 12b, Reish Lakish said, there are 7 firmaments, and they are as follows: Pilon, Rakir, Shkalim, Zevulun, Ma'on, Mechon, and Aravot. The Gemara proceeds to explain the role of each firmament. Vilon, even in modern Hebrew, is a curtain, is the firmament that does not contain anything, but enters at morning and departs in the evening and renews the act of creation daily. As
Good.
It is said, who stretches out the earth as a curtain and spreads them out as a tent to dwell in it. So it is God, because obviously these different firmaments are related to God, but it's fairly it's not that obvious or powerful. The liturgist deserves a lot of credit for taking that concept and giving it to you every morning when you wake up, as if to say, today's a new day. Adam, you're waking up in the morning. You can do anything today.
I just want to say that the way that the davening, that the liturgy is arranged in the morning. So we have the Shema, which is the center of the liturgy, and the blessings around the Shema actually correspond to the paragraphs of the Shema. So the first thing of Mechadesh B'chol Yom Tamid Maseh Bereshit, that God creates new things, that corresponds to Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That is what God is. It says, listen, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What does it mean, the Lord our God, the Lord is one? And so the blessing, the liturgy comes to tell you what that means is that God creates everything. So you're right to like that sentence more than any other sentence in the liturgy, because that really defines what God's role in the world is, to create new things every day.
That's amazing. I think we can end the podcast right now. We have a new kavanah. When we say the Shema, we need to focus on the fact that what that means to tell us is that God is creating the world every day. And every day when you wake up, it's a new day. The world is an oyster. Anyway, let's go and see in the Psalms, there is one more kind of allusion to this. It says in Psalms 104, send back your breath, they are created, and you renew the face of the earth. Tishlach ruchacha yivraun utechadesh pnei adama. Again, it's just a beautiful interpretation, and I love the word for chadash, which of course comes also to us on the monthly cycle of Chodesh.
Today is Rosh Chodesh.
Beautiful.
So it's perfect.
So there's this sense always in Judaism of renewal and of creating all over again. I did kind of know that there was this concept of perpetual renewal, and I found it, of all places, highlighted in Chabad. It seems that there's a link to the doctrine of perpetual creation, and according to this article that I found, the great works of Jewish philosophy, such as Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed, Remarks, Pardes, Rimonim, Rab Yeshayahu Horowitz, Shalach, and Rav Shneur Zalman of Ladi in the Talmud, in Tanya, I should say, discuss this doctrine of perpetual creation and cite spiritual, logical, and philosophical proofs that such is indeed the nature of existence. I don't know if this is the polar opposite of saying that God stops creating at the seventh day. I just feel that both of them, you can kind of have both in both hands. On the one hand, ain't somchin ala nes is a beautiful concept in the Talmud. Never rely on miracles. Not even our philosophy and our religion is based on the miracles. And on the other hand, when you live your life, every day, it's as if the world was created on that day. It's kind of similar to having the two polar opposites of I am from dust, from ashes in the one hand, and the other is Bishvili Nivra Olam, the world is created for me. I love this polarity.
Yeah, I mean, that tension is what life is about, right? You need to be humble, but you need to be self-confident at the same time.
So I think that if you had, I really do feel, and I would love if we could find a source for really why the rabbis had such a strong problem with God continuing creation afterwards. Of course, we've discussed this before. V'yachal Elohim et yom hashvi'i. V'yachal is ending. There is this sense of ending. It's a word, Rabbi. It could be interpreted anyway. I'm curious, and I don't know if we'll find the answer today, of what was driving the rabbis to stop the infinite, omnipotent God from creating after creation. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, but I do believe that in Judaism, if you had to take those two poles, I would say chidush, making renewal is a much more powerful framework.
I would agree with you. I think it's protecting the 6 days of creation. If God can do everything, so if God created the world, God could do everything, including create that which wasn't yet needed for creation. I think it's something like that.
But it's a little bit of a mystery. It's also a little bit of a mystery. The rabbis clearly ended up believing, as did all of the Jewish medieval philosophers, in Yesh Me'ayin, creation ex nihilo, from nothing. If you read Bereshit itself, it's not already clear. God started creation and he took pre-existing matter, it almost seems. But this became something that was a stake in the ground. And I think this is one of those things. And I'm willing to say, as long as it has no implications for how I think and how I live my life, I'm fine. And actually, we already discovered some positive implications. This idea of not relying on miracles, I think, is a beautiful idea and distinct to Judaism.
Really, very, very good. Yeah, I agree with you.
So let's just finish up by talking now about how the rabbis almost are tripping over themselves in that Talmud in Sanhedrin. Because what they actually are doing is they're saying there's nothing new. You can't create Gehenna, whether they're talking in a material sense or a philosophical sense. But by saying the word Gehenna, they're creating this new concept, or at least they're comporting it. The Torah itself has a shadowy notion of the afterlife. The dead go to Sheol, a neutral underworld. We don't have any stories about people coming back from the underlife, coming back to life. But the rabbis read into Sheol. Sheol is Gehenna. And that creates an interesting literary effect. The rabbis are reading a later doctrine back into the earlier text, not the first time. So you could say that this sugya kind of, what if the rabbis are creating a moment here? So in the process of kind of distancing themselves from creation, they are actually creating something and trying to put it into the Torah.
That's pretty good. Okay.
It is kind of interesting. It's not the first irony that we've had, but I do feel that there's no question in the rabbis' minds. Korach Moses was sending these people down to hell. And that's not altogether clear in the text, as opposed to the Peshat, like we always used to say, is he sent them to an untimely death when the earth opened up and swallowed them.
Hell was not a factor in the Chumash, right? It doesn't matter whether it's hell or not. He needed to get rid of them, and he got rid of them.
So I want to end up by a famous slogan of the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer, as you know and probably can fill in the blanks, Rabbi, lived at the period of the Haskalah, of the beginning of the Enlightenment, of the Reform movements, where people were thinking outside of the box and really being mechadesh. They were innovating and renewing. And he took an innocuous phrase of Chadash Isur Min HaTorah that relates to the new crop. You can't eat the new crop until a certain amount of time or until the second year. And he took that as, I would say, something that is an overarching directive of the ultra-Orthodox community up until today, which is no more creation. Chadash is usher from the Torah. And that's even though we all know that the Talmud was full of creations. Fixed prayer was not in the Bible. We had Kabbanot, the synagogue itself, the Passover Seder, Ketubah, rabbinic holidays, and of course, Gehenna itself was created.
It was a self-serving concept of the Chasam Sofer, because it was his way of rejecting the Reform movement.
Yes, but I think the takeaway that I have from today from Korach is that we have always renewed ourselves, and it is baked into us even when we have some conflicting conceptual issues that we have to deal with, as we did in this parsha. But it's that reimagining of Moses in Sanhedrin, to me, is just pristine, where Moses says, I need a hell, and if you're not going to if you haven't created it yet, you need to create it now. It's just wonderful. So once again at Madlik, we have taken 4 innocuous words, we've dived down into the crevasse and discovered a lot of gems and things to think about. Wonderful.
Fantastic. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Enjoy Parshat Korach. Next week, double Parsha, Chukak Balak.
Does that mean we're catching up to Israel?
We're catching up to Israel next week, correct.
Fantastic. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and see you all next week.